from you, and the rest of the evening is yours. Who's got the Brian? You've got the microphone. And Matt has the microphone. We'll go back and forth. Just get their attention, and they'll bring the mic over to you.
Thank you for coming. I wanted to get your opinion on the Lindsey Graham bill for the health care.
I kind of, the short answer is I like what I see so far. I think it falls short of everything I would want to see in that bill. The problem we've got is this, and this is how we got wrapped around the axle on Obamacare. Senate Republicans made a conscious decision not to reform their cloture rule. The cloture rule is basically the way you bring debate to an end. It's a very sound parliamentary principle. Most of us know it is moving the previous question. And the whole principle behind it is that as long as a significant minority wants to continue a discussion, that discussion should continue. After all, that's the reason for deliberation. That's the purpose of a minority, is to convince the majority of its point of view, or at least to point out flaws in the thinking of the majority. For that, you need debate. But that assumes it's a real debate where people are actually talking to each other about the subject at hand. That's the way cloture started out. But over the past 30 years or so, cloture has now become an administrative way of stopping debate, actually preventing debate. Instead of a debate, all that any member of the Senate has to do to block virtually any piece of legislation is to file a protest at the desk. And until somebody can come up with 60 votes, the bill cannot even be taken up, can't even be heard. So a motion that was originally designed to protect debate has now become a motion that very effectively prevents any debate. Senate Republicans could reform that rule. They did it for the Neil Gorsuch nomination. They've chosen not to do it for legislation. So in order to move health care forward, the House leadership made the decision to use a budget process called reconciliation. Reconciliation was never designed and never meant for complex policy reform. Reconciliation is simply designed to bring mandatory spending in line with the budget resolution numbers. That's all you can do with it. You can't change the underlying policies. But they tried to do that and ended up with this tangled, mangled mess that got a bad CBO score, fell far short of what we promised the American people, and although it's still better than Obamacare, and it couldn't even get a majority in the Senate. They're still trying to use that process, and what Graham and Cassidy have come up with is essentially a measure that does some very good things. Gets rid of the individual mandate that's been forcing people to purchase plans that they don't want, can't afford, and don't need. And it's getting rid of the employer mandate that has stuck many, many Americans in part-time jobs. My son worked at Food Max for 2 years, just after he graduated. Couldn't get beyond 29 hours a week because that triggered the Obamacare mandate. And there are so many people caught in that trap. Gets rid of both of those. And then it basically says to states, it's up to you. We're going to block grant you the money. You design the system you think best works for your citizens. California, we're not going to get much change. Other states like Tennessee, I think, are going to get very vibrant, competitive markets where people will have a wide choice of insurance and a tax system supportive of them so that they can afford that insurance. That's why we're going to need to get in the law a provision that allows people to shop across state lines. If you can find a better plan in another state, why can't you buy that plan? You can do that for any other form of insurance. Why can't you do that for your health insurance? So if we can get that done, I think it's going to be a huge step forward. And we've got to do something because Obamacare is collapsing. We had a 25% average increase. You know, you can't have a rational discussion when you're calling each other names. We've seen a 25% increase in premiums under Obamacare last year. We're warned of more coming this year. Last year, in 1/3 of the counties, in a third of the counties, there was only one plan left in the Obamacare markets. You had no choice. You had to take that plan. This year, we're seeing markets where you cannot get a plan because all of the providers have left. And today, 45% of the counties now have one choice left in the market. So we have to do something. The system's collapsing around us.
Not in your district.
Yes.